To kick things off, why don't you tell us very quickly about why you're running and specifically talk about your overall vision to support Massachusetts communities and their families.
Great, well thank you, Marcella. Hello, Massachusetts CDCs. It is great to be here with you. I thank you for the opportunity. I also want to thank you for everything you do every single day to support and strengthen our communities. So to answer Marcella's question, I'm running for governor because I care about people and I want to make a difference in people's lives. I want to strengthen our community. And with Donald Trump taking us backwards every single day, it's more important than ever. We've got real leadership right here in Massachusetts. It's not good enough to simply accept the world the way it exists and try to manage it better. We need a governor who's going to see the way the world should be and take us to that place. When I'm your governor, we will aim high to take on the big challenges holding regular people back. We will stand up for every single person in this state, and we will make Massachusetts a leader again. We'll aim high by investing an additional $3 billion each year in education and transportation, and we'll do it by asking the wealthy to pay their fair share. We will invest to give every child and family access to high-quality, affordable child care and preschool, to make every public school great for every single child, to make our public universities and community colleges affordable and debt-free, and yes, to fix our transportation system across this entire state so that people can actually depend on it to get to work on time. We will aim high for more affordable housing. We'll be more aggressive in fighting the opioid crisis. We'll be a leader in taking on climate change, and we will deliver a single-payer healthcare system that is simpler, cheaper, and does a better job keeping people healthy. We'll aim high for stronger gun laws, for expanded opportunities for women and communities of color, taking on sexual assault and harassment. But most important, we will aim high when it comes to how we treat people. I will stand up for every single person in this state. I will see you and hear you and respect you. And while I will operate from the head, I will lead from the heart. I look forward to being your governor and working with all of you to help strengthen our communities. Thank you.
Now, let's jump right into housing, and obviously there are many issues related to that topic that we could be discussing, but we wanted to zero in a topic that doesn't necessarily get a lot of attention, and that is a huge racial homeownership gap in our state. And just a couple of statistics to put it in context. Massachusetts has the third worst racial home ownership gap in the country. Here in the Commonwealth, the home ownership rate for the white population is twice than that for people of color. And in many communities of color, in Gateway City neighborhoods, the home ownership rate is less than 20%, which means that everyone rents. And that is a very unfair and unsustainable proposition for most of our families. So, what would you do as governor to tackle this embarrassing racial gap? And also, what will you do to increase the number of affordable home ownership opportunities available to low and moderate income families?
It is embarrassing. And this is one of many examples of huge racial disparities that exist in our culture that we've just accepted. We've normalized it. And it's not normal. And it's not acceptable. And it's not okay. And we do need to take on these disparities in home ownership rates. I want to just talk for a couple of seconds about affordable housing generally, and then I'm going to answer the question about what I'm going to do to address disparities in home ownership. But we've got a crisis. You all see it every day. Affordable housing in this state is a crisis. We need to significantly increase the supply of affordable housing, rental housing and home ownership. And we need to do it from a regional perspective. We need regulatory reform, not laws where we're asking municipalities nicely to make it easier to increase the supply, but where we are actually increasing the supply, balancing local community interests with the need for additional affordable housing all across this state. We need to leverage transportation as an affordable housing solution. We need to deal with the displacement that's happening in places like Boston and Cambridge and Somerville and many communities across this state. Home ownership has to be a particular focus, and particularly for first-time home buyers and addressing this racial disparity that exists in home ownership rates. So here's what I'm going to do. Funding. First of all, I want to congratulate all of you. I know you all played a big role in getting the affordable housing bond bill passed, but it's not going to do a lot of good if we just use that bond bill to continue to invest at the same rate we've been investing in affordable housing across the state. By the end of my first term, I will double the bond cap for affordable housing, and we will invest, over my first term, we will invest at least $50 million to fund production of new home ownership opportunities, new starter homes for new families. We will also work to expand affordable mortgage loans for home ownership for first-time buyers by increasing the tax-exempt volume cap allocation for that purpose. And we will double down on the down payment programs that exist, Mass Housing Partnership, to make it more affordable for first-time home buyers to buy homes. We will strengthen enforcement of all the laws that prohibit discrimination, which are part of the problem and have contributed to these disparities. I will pull together a summit, a home ownership summit of all the right stakeholders, and don't worry, you guys are going to be at this table to figure out what else we can do to address disparities in home ownership rates. I think we should expand what we're doing in gateway cities for the production of affordable homes, like the tax credits that exist in gateway cities, to other parts of the state to drive home ownership development there too. And the last thing I want to say is I think we need to do a better job coordinating our efforts. You see it in the positions you sit in at the CDCs. We have all these different state agencies that play a role in this, local communities that play a role in the development of affordable housing. We need to all get on the same page and be rowing in the same direction toward one strategic plan in each region that we're all driving our resources toward and leveraging those resources in a more coordinated and effective way to get the result we need, which is to close this disparity gap and increase the supply of home ownership rates, but also affordable housing all across the state.
So one of the key missions of the MACDC and its members is to help local businesses start and grow with programs like the Small Business Technical Assistance and the Small Business Matching Fund programs. Now, next year, in 2019, the governor and the legislature will have an opportunity to significantly expand those efforts. And that's because when Massachusetts legalized gambling, that law called for allocating nearly 10%, 9.5% of revenue to the Economic Development Fund, and the Massachusetts Gaming Commission has recommended that a portion of those dollars go to support programs by CDCs like the ones I mentioned before, and other organizations that also support small businesses all across the state. So can you talk about your plans for that fund, and would you commit to allocating a substantial share of these funds to help CDCs support disadvantaged entrepreneurs?
Yes. As I mentioned, I'm running for governor to make a difference for all of those who've been left behind, all the little guys out there, the people you're helping to support every single day. And the resources we have at the state level need to be prioritized toward that end. So this is a great new opportunity, a new resource for us from the gaming revenues, and I agree with the Commission's recommendation. I think leveraging the Mass Growth Capital Corporation as a way to distribute funds to CDCs and other organizations who are helping to support low-income communities and invest in small businesses that are provide the thriving life in communities and bring communities to life and bring foot traffic to communities and other investment to communities. These are the small businesses we need to be supporting. They create jobs for the people who we need to be creating jobs for. So I want to invest in those efforts. I want to partner with you in those efforts. When I worked for Governor Patrick as a Secretary of Administration and Finance, this was during the Great Recession, worst fiscal crisis we had faced. I believe this was the first time it was ever done, but I allocated capital funds to the Mass Growth Capital Corporation for this very purpose, to help support small businesses in lower income communities. So you've got my commitment that we're going to continue to do that and do it more under a Gonzalez administration.
The Community Preservation Act has been a great tool for municipalities to invest in affordable housing, open space, historic preservation, etc. But as more and more towns have adopted it, the state matching dollars have declined from dollar for dollar match to less than 20 cents. And that's because the deeds fee used to fund the match has not been increased in 18 years. So will you support increasing the deeds fee so the state matching funds can equal at least 50 cents on a dollar?
Yes, I will. This is something I've been talking about throughout my campaign. I will file legislation to increase the deeds fee to get the match for CPA to 50% of what's raised locally. I also, a couple other things I want to do. There are a number of communities that are not spending particularly the affordable housing dedicated funds. I want to take some steps and propose some legislation to help make sure that communities are spending the Community Preservation Act money they're getting for the purposes they're dedicated to. I also would like to propose increasing the minimum amount for each purpose from 10% to 20%, so that every community is investing at least 20% of their Community Preservation Act money in affordable housing development. CPA is kind of a love of mine. When it was first passed, I worked as pro bono counsel back when I was a lawyer for the Trust for Public Land and the Community Preservation Coalition, helping them get this law going. I led the campaign in the town of Brookline to try to adopt the Community Preservation Act there. Unfortunately, we didn't win that election the way we're going to win this election. And I worked with Joe and others to help support the passage of the Community Preservation Act in Boston recently. So I think it's a great law. It's been used by lots of communities to do a lot of good in each community. We need to jack up the state match now and make sure the state's living up to its obligation to help carry out the great mission of this law.
So you mentioned that you will take steps to make sure that that every city and town will live up to that requirement, that, at least the 10%. Can you talk a little bit about what those steps would look like? I mean, how are you going to ensure that they actually are living up to that requirement?
Yeah, so the details, I think, are something I'd want to make sure I've got input from lots of different stakeholders on. But, I mean, what we want to avoid and ultimately prevent is communities that are just sticking this money in the bank and not using it. And, it's there. They can't use it for anything else. It's dedicated to affordable housing. We need to make sure they're using it for affordable housing, and I want to get people's input about the best way to do that and what the right approach is to ensure it's not just sitting around not doing anything.
So, as you know, health outcomes are heavily influenced by socioeconomic factors like housing, education, and employment. The Department of Public Health has adopted groundbreaking regulations to require hospitals to invest in efforts to address these social determinants of health. What would you do to accelerate this convergence between health and community development, to drive health investments into community development and housing, and otherwise address these social determinants of health, that everything is so interconnected?
I'm really glad all of you are focused on this issue. And I know I met with Joe when I was a health insurance CEO. I met with Joe and a number of others probably in this room about ways my health insurance company could partner with community development corporations around addressing social determinants of health. People's health status is I think the estimates are something like 70% of a person's health status is dictated by these environmental factors, not by their actual health care. So we need to be figuring out ways to invest money that's now dedicated to health care more in some of these other factors that are going to have a bigger effect on people's health. One example, when I was Secretary of Administration and Finance, I initiated a program, a Pay for Success program, to put people in supportive housing, permanent housing, who are chronically homeless. Chronically homeless show up in the emergency room sometimes 50, 100 times a year. It's a huge strain on their health, and it's a huge strain on our healthcare costs. And what we found is that if we got people into permanent housing, stabilized their lives with the supports they needed to be successful, it not only was a better outcome for them, for their life and for their health, it saved taxpayers money. So those are the types of initiatives we need to pursue. I've been paying some attention to what you've been doing. I know one of your areas of focus has been on healthy food food deserts and other areas where people need access to healthy food. One of the things I want to do as governor is codify an executive order that Governor Patrick had in place that the Baker administration is not following around environmental justice. Low-income communities of color too often are taking the disproportionate brunt of environmentally dirty assets, and we need to change that and be intentional about making sure everybody is sharing the burden of environmental harms and the benefits of progressive environmental policy. And I'm going to want to work with you as governor to figure out how we continue to leverage what you have to offer to help address these social determinants of health and create healthier and stronger communities.
I want to go back to housing a little bit because it's been referenced that we obviously have a housing crisis in the state, and there's different components to that. There's affordable housing, there's rental, gentrification, the racial homeownership gap that we mentioned. But I wonder if I could get you to reflect a little bit of why do you think housing hasn't been a major issue in this campaign? And what do you hear as you campaign throughout the state? What do you hear from people? And why haven't we been hearing more on debates and as we follow this race?
Interestingly, it hasn't been asked in the first two debates we've had. We have one more on November 1st. Hopefully it will be asked there. But this has been a big issue for me in this campaign. I've been talking about it a lot because it is one of the top issues I hear about everywhere I go. And not just in the greater Boston area, on the Cape, in the Berkshires, in different pockets of this state. It is a crisis, and it manifests itself in different ways in different parts of the state. And we need we can't have a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. We need regional strategies in different parts of the state that are going to account for the different challenges we face and take advantage of the different opportunities we have to address them. But I see this right next to transportation as the two biggest issues that are going to start dragging our economy backwards if we don't get serious about addressing them and have a sense of urgency around it and have real leadership where we are putting controversial things on the table because we can't afford not to address it. This isn't going to work if we're just asking municipalities nicely to do the right thing. I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. We can't count on 351 different cities and towns working in isolation to solve this problem for us. What we've been doing is not working. We need leadership at the state level. We need to drive solutions, regional solutions to address this problem. And when I'm governor, we will.
So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about anything else in your housing agenda that we haven't touched on. Homelessness, for example, very much tied to the opioid crisis in the state, or gentrification. Anything else that you wanted to highlight about your housing plan?
One of the things I mentioned before is investment and funding, which is a big part of it. And frankly, it hasn't been a huge priority from the state's perspective, at the state budget perspective, and the state's capital budget. And we're in a place now where we need to make it a higher priority. And that's where I said, I know there are a lot of people who are very excited about the affordable housing bond bill that passed recently, and a lot of work went into it, and it's important. But if it just continues to fund the same level of investment in affordable housing that we've been funding, it's not going to do a lot of additional good in addressing the crisis we have. And so by committing, by the end of my first term, that I'm going to double the amount that the state invests through its annual capital budget in affordable housing programs and make a special commitment to home ownership opportunities, that'll ensure that we, instead of that affordable housing bond bill being spent in 9 years, I think, which is the schedule it would be on, we'll do it in half the time. And we'll need a new affordable housing bond bill by the end of my first term, and I'll look forward to working with all of you to get that passed. But the housing bond bill isn't what actually results in investment. It's an administration that makes it a priority to use it and actually put the funds in the capital plan to get to where we need to be. And I am committing I will double by the end of my first term our investment in affordable housing.
Last question. Here, MACDC believes that partnership is the key to success. In that spirit, will you agree to meet with MACDC at least once a year to make sure that there's open dialogue and that there's maximum partnership between your administration and our membership?
Does this mean Joe Kreisberg only wants to talk to me once a year if I'm governor?
He'll text me too.
The answer is yes, of course. You all play a really important role in addressing a lot of the issues that we've talked about today, but also a lot of the issues that I care about and a lot of the reason I'm running for governor. So we need an open dialogue. We're going to need to have open lines of communication, and we're going to need to be working together. Not only for me to support a lot of what you're doing, but for you to support a lot of the ambitious agenda that I'm running for governor to drive. I'm not running to manage the status quo. If you think the status quo is good enough and where we need to be, then vote for the other guy, because that's not why I want to be governor. I'm running for governor to take on the big challenges that are holding most people back and to make a difference in a way that people are going to actually feel. I believe in us. I believe in our potential. I love the fact that Massachusetts has always been a leader. We take pride in it. We've always believed we can overcome any challenge if we put our mind to it and work for it. And I believe that too. I want us to live up to that. I'm not satisfied with the transportation system that is one of the worst in the country, or an education system that's failing too many of our young people, or an affordable housing crisis that is going to drag us backwards. I'm not satisfied. I know all of you as organizations can't be political, but I'm asking each of you as individuals for your support, for your help. I know what we're up against. An incumbent governor with millions of dollars of dark money, the special interests, corporate establishment on his side, all the pundits who declared this race over before it even started. But as we've seen in races across this country, and right here in Massachusetts, as Ayanna Pressley and other insurgent candidates showed us just a few weeks ago, incumbency and money and special interests and pundits and polls don't decide elections. We do. People do. I know I'm the little guy in this election, literally and figuratively. When you see the governor come up here next, you'll see that too. But I also know that time and time again, little guys overcome overwhelming odds when their cause is just. They aim high, work hard, and support each other along the way. With your help, I am 100% confident we will win this election. And when we do, we will aim high again. We will make Massachusetts a leader again, and we will make a meaningful difference for all the little guys out there. Thank you very much.